Zoe Otten, Director of Programming for Mill Valley Film Festival. I'm thrilled to welcome you all here for our tribute to Jude Law. And a film festival would not be a film festival, especially an international film festival, without guests. And one of our sponsors has been really instrumental in making sure we get great people here. They're our official airline, Delta. Delta, thank you so much. So we're going to begin the proceedings with a clip reel of what feels like the tip of the iceberg of Jude Law's extraordinary career. But hopefully it will spark some memories for you of what he's done, and then we will talk about it. Enjoy. Please join me in welcoming Jude Law. So how was that to see your life flashing in front of your eyes? Just, you know, seeing it here and now, was there any one clip that jumped at you?
I probably the first, playing Bosie Douglas in Wild, because I look like such a baby. And honestly, I'm not someone who tends to look backwards. And it's a funny one because at certain times a popular question is to ask an actor or a filmmaker or anyone who artist of sorts, you know, what do you remember, or which films do you like, or what albums do you like? And I tend not to have a good answer because I don't really look back. I'm often what's next, looking forward to what's next. So it's really quite emotional. The thing that keeps coming to knowing that I was coming here, and I must thank everyone for inviting me really and giving me this tribute. It means so much. And coming to a festival like this, supported and embraced by a film-loving community, it's absolutely at the heart of why I love doing what I do. So thank you. Indeed. But the opportunity to look back, all I kept thinking about were the many people that helped me make those films, and the directors and the crews and the cast. And I love the collaborative process of filmmaking. It's such a intricate, finely balanced machine with so many parts, of which, of course, performing is just one small one. But that journey and all those people, gosh, that's
it's
really
true,
what came
actually.
to my
I mean,
mind.
that's hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of people that we
Indeed.
see contributing to that.
Yeah,
reel. It's incredible.
And for me, those little moments in my life that the film is left as a sort of souvenir of, but in fact for me it's memories of, you know, the odd parts of the world you find yourself to shoot them, or the hotels that you're in, or where your family are with you, and all of those details.
Yeah, so you've got the backstory memory as well. Yeah. I've been asking people, you know, what they know of your work and what work resonates with them and that kind of thing. And it's kind of interesting, because I've been asking people of different generations.
Yeah.
Ripley is kind of ubiquitous, I would have to say. But one of the things that was really interesting to me, talking to one of our younger staff members, was that she saw Gattaca in high school, and they used it as a teaching tool.
Yeah.
I mean, that's fairly recent.
Yes, it is.
Which is kind of interesting. I had no idea.
It's a film that really stands up, though. The science of it holds.
Yeah.
And has oddly become more prevalent, I think, as the film has aged. In fact, the first time I came here was to film Gattaca at the Frank Lloyd Wright Civic Center. I drove up. We were based in Los Angeles. It was the first film I made there, and Ethan Hawke and I really hit it off. And then we had to move production up here to shoot there, and we decided to drive up, which I don't think the producers weren't very happy with. I guess they wanted to keep us all contained and keep an eye on us. And Ethan and I were like, we'll be fine. And it was a wonderful bonding experience, and my first experience of driving up that amazing coastal highway and then coming up and into the city here. And a very formative memory of mine.
Yeah, that's a great way to get introduced to this part of the world.
Yes,
It's beautiful. Yeah. Another of the titles that came up as well is The Holiday. Okay, how many of you watch The Holiday every Christmas?
Oh my God. Yeah,
see, I think you've transcended Snoopy as the Christmas go-to.
You do not know what a compliment that is, because I love Snoopy. I love Snoopy. Well, what's extraordinary, I exchanged an email with Nancy Myers, the director, just recently. Oh, okay. And she was sort of hinting at this extraordinary, I guess you'd call it, sort of ritual of watching that film. Yeah. All I can remark is you just never know. You can't set out to do that. No. And so it really is a phenomenon. It's extraordinary to me. I can understand why, but nonetheless, it could have just had its success and come and gone. But the fact is, it seems to sit in people's hearts, and that's a wonderful thing. It's a really exciting thing to be part of.
It really is, and actually, just looking at your career as a whole, I mean, the thing that is incredibly striking is that you've never become typecast. You have such a broad range of characters that you've managed somehow, to engage with. Has that been an intentional choice? Have you avoided getting too many romantic leads, or has it just been?
No, it's been absolutely intentional.
Yeah. Okay.
And it was off the back of being inspired by careers such as De Niro and Pacino, obviously the kind of the great grandfathers of that kind of career, and then closer to home, Gary Oldman and Tim Roth and Daniel Day-Lewis and Sean Penn. And it just always intrigued me. I remember seeing Daniel Day-Lewis in My Beautiful Laundrette and then Room with a View, and I couldn't believe it was the same man. Yeah. And just the opportunity to disappear into roles like that was one of the big reasons, one of the big pulls of being an actor, certainly in film, and the challenge of doing that. And I look back and I think I gave myself emotionally too much of a hard time when I was younger, really feeling that I just wanted to go against the grain and not lean into looks and not play. I took it really seriously. It was a sort of insecurity, probably more that I just wanted to prove myself as an actor, a great actor. And but I rode quite hard over myself in order to achieve that. But looking back, it was instrumental in choosing roles, not repeating oneself, trying to find something that was very different. And then, of course, you're always in the hands of the career of the business itself. So you hope that people will come to you too. It's hard to sometimes. You're only ever, unless you produce, you're only ever waiting for people to offer you what they see you capable of being in. And so that can sometimes be frustrating. Yeah.
Are there casting directors that you feel have been great allies for you in that way?
Certainly recently, Nina Gold.
Yeah, Nina Gold is one of the...
And she's a brilliant casting director. Yeah. And she's become a friend, actually. But she saw me trying to sort of break a mold early on and would often offer me roles that helped me do that.
Yeah. I mean, actually, even thinking about your early career, you didn't get really stuck into molds too much. I mean, Wild was an early film for you.
Yes.
And I mean, Bosie is terrific.
Evil.
Yeah, evil. Yeah.
He was so nasty. I did all this research. There's all this beautiful writing, of course, about Oscar and Robbie Ross and the many great minds around Oscar's salon. And no one had a nice thing to say about Bosie Douglas. I couldn't find one thing. They just called him poisonous.
Was that because they loved Oscar, or was it because they hated him?
They loved Oscar, and I think he was just an evil, nasty little twerp. Yeah, okay. He wasn't a very. He denounced Oscar. He denounced his homosexuality. He denounced from being this pivotal well, really, his relationship was what brought Oscar down.
Yeah.
And then he denounced him and moved on.
So if you're engaging with a character who you know, first of all, it's a real life character, but you know to have been a nasty piece of work. Where are you engaged? What are you engaging with as you build that character? Is it an emotional thing, a physical thing, or?
Well, it always has to start with understanding them and what makes them tick. You know, I have to preface this by saying that when I was putting parts together like Bosie Douglas 30 years ago, right. I didn't really have a method. I didn't have a process. I was doing an awful lot of it on a wish and a prayer, and sort of relying an awful lot on what I thought I could do, but not really knowing how to build a character, really following and learning what a director was directing, where they were directing me and how they were directing me. So I look back on some of my early work and I'm always a bit like this, like how did I get away with it? And it was only over time watching other actors that I learned how to really build a character, and now it's the part I love the most, really, the prep, preparation. But to answer your question more specifically, you know, to me it's about, you can never approach a character thinking, right, I'm the bad guy, or, you know, he's in evil. You have to understand why they behave the way they do, and
right.
Who are they. So you go right back to the beginning, childhood, and how they've been treated, what they're trying to prove. And then their actions, which are there as a map in the script, will obviously bring those personality traits out anyway. There's no point leaning into them.
Yeah. You mentioned directors. You mentioned watching other actors. Who have been your sort of like North Star actors to look at and to? I mean, have you sort of just like studied films of people's work, or is it from people that you've worked with? What have been the light bulb moments for you?
A little bit of both. I mentioned a few earlier.
Yeah.
And their careers, Gary Oldman's, Sean Penn's, Daniel Day-Lewis, they were certainly people I would go and watch their films and sort of eat up whatever they were doing. And revel in any transformation that they'd achieved or that they'd pulled off and how they'd done that. I've never been one to particularly go and really study in order to learn for another character. Right. I mean, I'll go down the rabbit hole of, you know, suddenly falling in love. It's like a director falling in love with a director and suddenly you want to watch everything they've ever made. I mean, I'm certainly guilty of that, and the same with actors. And you see one great performance and, okay, I've got to see everything now. Kind of like collecting cards, you know. But I feel like, honestly, if I'm reflecting on it, it feels more like letting it really wash over you. That's not to say I haven't seen things over and over again, but never gone to study, oh, they did it like that.
Right.
I think the answer really lies more in who I've worked with. Watching Ethan work early on in my career was incredibly instructive. You know, he was a theatre actor like myself, and really embraced the entirety of filmmaking, the script, the director, how, where, and what the camera was doing. And again, watching him operate like that on a set was very instructive to me. And then working with, and I was very lucky, I got to work with Sean.
Right.
I made a film called All the King's Men with him.
Right.
And watching him on that was remarkable. Completely in command of the moment and what the camera was doing in that moment and how he could manipulate that.
So you mentioned theatre, and a lot of British actors obviously have deep roots in theatre. Indulge me for a minute and tell me how it was to play Hamlet in Elsinore.
It was a remarkable experience. Luckily, I had the confidence in the production and in the role because I'd already done it. I'd done it for about 5 months in London, and then we went to Elsinore, and then we brought it to Broadway.
Right.
The whole experience was extraordinary. It was a sort of all-consuming experience. When you're playing Hamlet, you don't really have much time to do anything else. You're so exhausted, and you've got to get yourself up and ready and the voice ready every single morning. It's it's almost like an MOT check on the car. You're sort of like, yep, the voice works, kind of, what's my range like today? Have I got any sprains because of the huge fight sequence? I mean, It's a grueling physical challenge. And the Elsinore experience was remarkable. I'll tell you a funny story, though. I was on my way. So Hamlet was part of a London season that had run and done several other productions. And one of the productions was, my brain, Malvolio. What plays that?
Twelfth Night.
Twelfth Night. 5 points.
Wait, did you say you played Malvolio?
No, sorry. Oh, okay. No. Derek Jacobi was in another production of that same. So we did Hamlet, Twelfth Night, and I think they did Measure for Measure. Yeah. And so we had this big celebration, and Derek came over to me at the party before we went to Elsinore, and he said, someone has to invite the lighthouse keeper. And I said, what? He said, yes, there's a lighthouse over there, because he was, only a few people have played Hamlet there. He was one, Olivier was one, and I said, well, okay, we have to tell the stage manager. So on the opening night, there's this guy on the front row with his huge coat and a big beard and his wife and his boots, and it's the lighthouse keeper. And he turned off the light for the production, because otherwise the light whizzes round. And isn't that a great story? So we invited the lighthouse keeper.
Oh my God.
And it was because of Derek Jacobi.
Bless him.
Yeah.
It's great. I always think that there's something about the language of Shakespeare, once you've spoken it and imbibed it and you've felt it in your body, that can probably set you in good stead for any role you want to ever play. I mean, do you feel that having had Hamlet in your, like having spent months with Hamlet, that has informed in any way the vocal work that you do, or,
Very much so.
Yeah.
Just the relish and the thing, the reliance on the word and the power of the word or the phrase, and knowing that can sometimes be enough. You don't have to do anything else but get that right. And the understanding behind the words. And then indeed even just the technicality of almost like a tongue twister, having the mouth and the muscles around the mouth and in the mouth nimble enough to execute any kind of shape, phrase, and pitch. Yeah. I mean, it's a total lesson. And there's a wonderful sense of confidence in the words that you can carry into other roles.
Yeah.
But then what's interesting, as I say that, there's something I've learned more and more recently is also how silence helps. Film silence is I think one of the most powerful tools we have. Yeah. As an actor. And so sometimes not saying anything and knowing when to speak is just as valuable. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of rookie screenwriters have to learn to let go of a lot of language and really, surrender to the image.
And knowing that the process of losing dialogue in a script is a part of the editing process. Yeah. It's all about distilling. Yeah. And so don't hold, of course you want to hold on to beautiful sayings or beautiful pieces of dialogue, but sometimes, as with great scenes in the editing room, you've got to let them go.
Yeah. One of the other things I notice in your film work is that, as well as language, that is like what you do from your neck up. Some people, I think, it's almost like there are independently sprung muscles in your face, and that a part of that when you're shooting has to be, what the camera is looking at. It seems like the camera loves you. But who are your other allies on set? And what it is, do you think that the face is super important in cinema, acting?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's, I don't get to, a musician can go home and play their musical instrument. Right. And an artist, a painter can paint, and a writer considered a typewriter. Actors have to share their art form. It's communal. They can't sit at home acting. Yeah. And so the face is my instrument, my tool, and learning how to move it and manipulate it and change it. I remember, this is an odd example, but I think it sort of tells you something about it. There was a scene there from a film when I played a sniper, and I got the part, I rehearsed. I didn't realize that I couldn't actually close. So snipers have to close this eye, and I had to teach myself to close that eye, because I could wink with that eye, but he was right-handed, so I had to teach myself to wink with that eye. It took me ages. I had to sit in the mirror trying to teach this eye to close. So that was literally training my face to use a muscle it didn't want to use or didn't know how to use. But the interesting thing about characters, and I'm sort of riffing here, this isn't something I necessarily dwell on, but is that you suddenly find yourself using your face in a different way because you're finding them, they're finding themselves in you, and they're coming out through your face, through your mouth, through how they breathe, where they place their voice. You know, some characters obviously talk down here, some are up here, you know, and accents affect that. So suddenly, and accents are affected by the muscles in your mouth too. An accent is teaching your tongue to do things it doesn't want to do.
Absolutely.
But the other allies on set, gosh, I mean, honestly, I don't say this to sound all sort of mushy, but honestly, I feel you have to be at home on a set. I think you have to be, for me, not all actors are like this, but I really like it to be comfortable. I like it to be safe. And it needs to feel like a team. And so my allies are everywhere. Your allies are everyone on the set. It's knowing that the atmosphere is right, so that when you have to go out and do your piece or bare your heart or whatever it may be, you feel supported. The idea of there being, you know, any area where you feel slightly uncomfortable or awkward is for me that's what's going to be in your mind.
Right.
Yeah.
So we have a couple of other clips to look at. So I'd like to see if Dan would play us a clip from The Talented Mr. Ripley. This is one of many, but it is such an iconic film. Plus, it was very early in your career. And did you learn to play the saxophone?
Yeah. Well, as much as I could, of course. I blindly went in thinking I was going to be, you know, Charlie Parker. And the guy teaching me was like, "No, let's stick to the songs you have to play in the film." But Giles Barker, the guy who was on the trumpet there, put together that band and was incredibly helpful. And what a wonderful experience. And you're right. Very early on in my career, I mean, I look back and I wish I'd drunk it all in a little more because, you know, I've not yet done another film on the coast of Italy with a yacht and, you know, playing a guy with more money than sense. And at the time, I just sort of thought, yeah, this is filmmaking, you know. It's just, these parts are going to come around twice a year. Never again. But it was an amazing experience. Looking back, each of us were at such formative times in our life. We were all just breaking through. Gwyneth, Matt, Philip, Kate. It was an incredible group to pull together, and led by the wonderful Anthony Minghella, who became a very good friend, and I went on to make 2 more films with him.
Well, let's talk about working with Anthony Minghella a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, as a director, one of the things that I find fascinating with actors is that they are one of the few human beings on the planet who actually get to witness what directors do. You know, people talk about it, you know, people in film school learn it, but you actually get to witness it. So what did you witness on your first production with Anthony Minghella? And then what else did you witness as you worked with him on the other projects?
I learned so much from Anthony. Sense of family and warmth towards those around you, and the responsibility on your shoulders as the lead. That, you know, there are key people coming in doing 2 days, 1 day, and he always said, this is your wedding. So you have to welcome your guests. And really looking after people, nurturing them, and really saying, this is how it goes. This is welcome. This is the mood. This is how we're working really hard. We're having fun. We're pushing each other, you know, really setting those bars up. A good example was in Cold Mountain. I remember we had a huge number of the Romanian army out to play in the big battle sequence. And he came round to me at the end of the first day with this big box and said, come on, we're going to go round and say thank you to them all. And we went around with chocolate and brandy and And that was very amped, and I've taken that on. And it's a responsibility. I think you host the people coming in and out. He had a great way of making you. He would listen to you, and you really thought that all your ideas were going in, and then you realized you were just doing exactly what he wanted. And he did that not callously even, but maybe it was going in. But it was the patience. I remember he would always hold your hand and listen. You felt it going in, but you then realized that maybe a lot of your ideas were falling by the wayside. He was doing what he needed to do. I did see the pressure that built on his shoulders after the success of The English Patient. And Ripley, I think, took a lot out of him. And then with Cold Mountain, because it was such a hugely successful book and the budget was bigger, he took that very, very seriously, the responsibility of all that money on his shoulders. And I could see it hanging heavy on him. I don't know that he felt as free and as able to create in the way he wanted to because of that pressure. And it's why he went, his last film was a little indie called Breaking and Entering that we did together. And had he lived, I like to think that we would have done more of those, because that was a way I think he felt that he was more liberated. And sorry, something else came to my mind. He taught me so much about, and obviously he was a writer director, which was a very particular, all-consuming and all-consuming sort of visionary, but the way he worked through a script, and you reminded me of it earlier when you were talking about younger writers writing in silences. He always talked about the space between the words. That he said, you say that, and then you say this, and then, but this is where it really happens, meaning something here. Yeah. And he would always bring that out, like that's the alchemy, that's the magic.
I'm going to riff off of that and go in a completely different direction. As you talk about working with him, you've also worked with Wes Anderson, who could not be more different in terms of, and very, very distinctive style, very, very specific in the way that we receive it as audiences. What was that like?
So that's a very good example of me seeing a world in a film that I just loved and I wanted to be in it. And I'd seen several of his films, and I wrote to him actually and said I just was a massive admirer. And he offered me that role. Although funnily enough, the writer that I play appears in the first 5-10 pages, and so I'm reading this thinking, oh my goodness, he's offered me the lead. Then he disappears for nearly 90% of the film and comes back at the end. Oh no, okay, I'm the bookends. But yeah, he actually had a little animated version of the entire film and how he wanted it to look.
Animated meaning how? Like
pencil drawn
just
sort
drawings,
of animation, yeah. So it was as specific as that. And actually it was a really good example, because in that scene there's a shot over my right shoulder where I'm looking at Jason. And the natural way to look at Jason would have been like that, but he wanted me like that because the position of the head is just so, and it's always those straight lines. I was a sucker for the punishment,
isn't it?
Pardon?
It's very choreographic.
Hugely choreographed and really specific.
Yeah.
The obvious parallel is to mention that he also makes films with puppets.
Right. Yes, indeed. And how does that feel?
I'm not saying any more.
Just moving on to another director. What other director that you've worked with? Because, some of the people you've worked with are extraordinary. Scorsese and Sorrentino and, the list goes on. What director would you love to work with again? And why? Gosh,
so many of them. I would love to work with Spielberg again. He taught me so much about collaboration. This is Steven Spielberg, and yet he encourages you to bring so much of yourself to the part, and it was such a lift in my self-confidence. I would have ideas, and he'd say, "Great, go away and do that. Go study and send me."
This is with AI.
With AI, yeah. I had this whole thought about him dancing and the music, and he said, great, go. He sorted out a choreographer, but empowered me to go and do that. And then, you know, you'd always come back and he'd sort of sift through it and say, not that's too much, what about this? But it was such a sense of collaboration.
With him specifically, or with him and the other actors? Or
the world he had around him,
it
was an empowering world. It was a world where you were made to feel that your input was essential. And he was very much the center of that, but everyone around him is operating at their best, but they're doing what they want. It's not just being instructed.
Right.
Justin Kurzel, who I just worked with on The Order, I really want to work with again. I loved working with him. He brings this dynamism and has an incredible empathy for actors and rooting out performance from something on the page that seems there's nothing here. And David O. Russell, who I'm actually developing something with. He was a wild card. He was anarchic and testing and dangerous at times, but utterly brilliant in my mind. I think he makes great films, and I loved being on his set. It was like you didn't know what was going to happen.
Well, that scene that we looked at was just, you know, it's like you've just been...
I mean, he had me crying all day. I made the big mistake of saying in that, I said, as he's having his he has a nervous breakdown over the sort of last chapter of the film. And I said, wouldn't it be awful if he was just sweating the whole time? So of course, which he said, he was like, great, yeah, you're going to be soaking wet. And the only thing we could use was baby oil. So every day I go for like weeks, they were just covering me. That was just all oil. So I really regretted that idea. Just sort of dripping.
They must have had multiple costumes for
you.
They
had to, yeah.
Oh, crazy. You mentioned The Order. We have a clip of The Order too. So if Dan is ready, let's see. Which we also showed at the festival. How many of you saw The Order earlier on this week? Okay, great. All right. Excellent. And you break the window.
Yeah.
Not your hand as well, I hope.
No, luckily not, no.
So you were talking about working with Justin Kurzel on this. Unpack that scene a little bit for us in terms of how you set it up and what you went through in that one. If that's okay.
I'm just remembering back. So, we have very little time and very little money, and he was fantastically organized and had an incredible relationship with Adam Arkapour, the DP, Eddie Richards the first, and the three of them just moved at a rate of knots. And
so really focused,
but also so smart at capturing energy. He knew that once you start doing a scene like that, it's like getting lightning in a bottle. You can't expect people to keep doing it and keep doing it. But also he loves the kind of loose edges. So really knowing where the camera was and what each shot what we had to get from each shot. But our whole relationship with Terry Husk, the guy I play, was one about this man being tested to his limit, and he's like a broken horse. He's already he hasn't got a lot left in him. He's given 30 years of his life to the FBI and is sort of physically and spiritually a broken man. So it was always he always wanted me absolutely on the edge, emotionally, and so. You know, often that would mean just getting to a place of sort of breakdown, to be really honest. He was always very generous with time, go away and take the time you need. And it was just pushing, it was about pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. And there was, I don't think there was, I mean, he would just, we have a really, we established a very quick and very to the point shorthand. And he would talk about heat. He'd go, more heat, more heat. And it was always about this. He would like grab my belly and be like, it's got to be in there. It's got to be in there more. And so with the scene with Jamie, with Ty Sheridan in the car, I think that was our third or fourth take. And prior to that, it had been a little more aggressive but not wild, and then eventually he just, as is Justin's way, he'd just say, just unleash everything you've got left on him. And that's what we got.
And that was the last take.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. So, yeah. I mean, it's so interesting, though. I mean, it's again, you know, you're working on a character who's actually somebody who lived.
Yeah. Well, kind of. He was a sort of amalgam.
Who's okay.
We felt, because the special agents that worked on that case were so extraordinary and did such incredible work, we didn't want, and we knew that the character had to have certain personal issues and personal backstory that, again, we didn't want to hang on the real guy. So we decided to amalgam.
Yeah.
And then the more we worked on him, between Justin, Zach, the writer, and I, we really wanted, I mean, I think I came up with the idea of having the family that never arrives, and Justin was keen for him to have some kind of a stent or something going on, which is why he's coughing all the time and taking these pills. And we just wanted him to feel, for the audience, that he was incapable of maybe seeing this through.
Right.
And to me, I wanted him to symbolize, really, I think, where a lot of us feel. You know, 10 years ago, I thought the fight was behind us. And in fact, the fight's in front of us. And I wanted that to, Terry needed to be that. So he's a little bit of Wayne Mannis, the real agent, and there was another one called Broadbent, but mostly we sort of added a lot of those qualities to build him.
You're saying we a lot, and you were a producer on this film. So were you working, what was did you choose this particular project, or did you become attached as a producer later? No,
we developed it. So my company, Riff Raff, had a great relationship with Zach, the writer, and he gave, this was one of several things we're developing with him, and it was a great story, a story that I had no idea about, and with this wonderful role. And it just seemed, for that to then be sat inside a genre piece is too good a package to step away from. Yeah. We were lucky to get Justin on board very early, and then we realized we were in the hands of absolutely the right director, someone who could really elevate a genre, really in the style of sort of Lumet and Friedkin, you know, the way they made genre movies in the late 70s and early 80s.
Right.
And so when I say we, it was also a very collaborative process, building this film, building the character, and now finishing the film.
And then you premiered at Venice. How was that?
That was wonderful. We couldn't believe it. I mean, it was, you know, it's every day on a film like that is an effort. How can we get through the day? We just missed the strike by, I'm not joking, about 2 days. So we finished it, wrapped it. And
you finished it before the strike?
Just before the strike, yeah.
That's amazing.
I mean, I want to tell everyone how much time it took us to film, but I don't, because I don't want anyone to know, because they may make us do it again. We made it in record time, and for those of you who saw it, you'll know. But you know, there are huge car chases in it and big set pieces, which require, you know, a lot of time and attention, and we managed to pull it off. So the fact that we were invited to this, you know, international film festival was extraordinary. We were so chuffed, and I think it's because we had underestimated how much Justin had elevated the piece from a genre. We knew it was a genre film that was delivering a message, but what was lovely was, I think people are seeing it and recognizing, actually, goodness, there's a real social and political message in there that's delivered within the package of a thrill ride.
Yeah. And the content, obviously, you know, I mean, it's fascinating, the book thing, you know, the playbook for these extremists, and how incredibly pertinent it is to the moment that we're in right now. I mean, was that partly driving your desire to do it? It
was absolutely part of the timing. I mean, we had started work on it before the uprising on the Capitol.
Really?
And there were people on the Capitol with copies of the book. So it became more and more pertinent. But I have to say, what's interesting is, to me, you know, I love the power of film as a conversation starter, as a reminder, and as a form of entertainment. And what Justin did brilliantly was, I think, fold all of those into this film. It doesn't hit you over the head with its politics. In fact, what he does, I think, better than almost anyone at the moment is he looks at human behavior. He looks at why people behave the way they do. He doesn't judge. And what's important about this, there's some horrific rhetoric in this and some awful characters, but these people behave that way for a reason. And it's more, rather than brushing them under a carpet as monsters and idiots, it's more, why do they behave like this? And I think he's very good at looking at that.
Yeah. One last question. You grew up in London, and you still live there, I think.
Yes.
Is London really important for you, culturally, creatively, as a root place for you to live as an artist?
I suppose so. I mean, I have a really odd relationship with London. I was just there. I'm actually living in New York at the moment because my house in London is being renovated, and I was working in New York, so me and the family decided to stay in New York. But I went back, and I have a sort of love-hate relationship with it. I think because I'm emotionally tapped into it. Yeah. I sort of, it's a bit like a kind of annoying relative sometimes. I'm sort of slightly begrudging and frustrated by it. Whereas if you said the same thing in New York, you know, New York's just as busy, just as dirty, just as crazy. And I'm like, I love New York because I'm visiting, you know.
Right.
But to answer your question, I think it must have, yeah. I do. I love places like San Francisco, like Chicago. I love cities that really feed you, and where you feel the artist's presence and community around you. And its history resonates with me an awful lot. But honestly, I think I live there because it's also a place where I know how to escape. I know how to have a normal life there, because it's where I grew up.
Yeah. Well, thank you for letting us look at your on-screen life.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all for listening.
And I'm going to have Mark come up. And I would like to invite Mark Fishkin to come to the stage because we have the Mill Valley Film Festival Award for you.
Hello. That was a wonderful interview. Well, we have something for you. I'm going to put it down just for a second because it's heavy. I prepared a few remarks, and there's a saying that goes, if you want to make God laugh, tell him you made plans. Fortunately, that is just an expression, as it appears to this one observer. From the outside, Jude Law was always meant to be an actor. Always. There was nothing on this earth that was going to change that. Having supportive parents, and I don't know your parents, but I'm presuming because they let you drop out of school at 17 to join a theater company, they were supportive. Into your early 20s, your roles were primarily comprised of a series of shorts and TV movies until 1994, with your first feature, Shopping, when you played the ultimate bad boy, which is something that you should all see. As Lord Alfred Douglas in Wilde, the industry, the public started to notice. This was the young actor with an unusual amount of talent and charisma. In 1997, your performance in The Talented Mr. Ripley, co-produced by Paul Zantz from the Bay Area, that you had your breakthrough moment as Dickie Greenleaf, and nothing would ever be the same again. David Thompson remarked regarding your performance, how seldom we see raw vitality on the screen these days. It was this performance that you won your first Oscar nomination. I'm going to go off script here because I'm not very good at being on script. And I want to say two things. As we were talking about before, you made 60 movies. That's a lot of movies. And the thing is that what I see not every movie is going to be an Academy Award winner. As you said, there were even a couple you would like to forget. Everything that I have seen, and admittedly I haven't seen all 60, but any film, regardless if it's a contender or not, you make better. The great movies are better because you're in it, and the other movies that are not as great become better as well. And that is an incredible gift, not only to the film and the filmmaker, to all of us. And I don't know if we could bottle that, but if we could, we would have a greater industry. But I want to say something else related to that as well. And I don't think of myself as particularly more spiritual than anyone else, but there's something about your performances that are beyond your incredible ability to use your body and your voice and everything else as an instrument. There's something indefiniable that comes out through your eyes, through every gesture, as you and Zoe were talking about. But I think it's deeper. I think it's from here, and as you said, from here. And I don't know what it is, but I know when you give that steely stare in a movie, or the completely different kind of stare that says, I love you, there are so many things that are just, I don't know where they come from, but I thank you for giving it to us. On behalf of the California Film Institute and the Mill Valley Film Festival, I'd like to present you with the Mill Valley Award.